William Shakespeare wrote some of the darkest stories in the English language, but there is one play in his early catalog so intensely violent, so saturated in gore, that it makes Macbeth and Hamlet look almost gentle by comparison. This is Titus Andronicus. It was staged right at the beginning of his career, and it proved to his Elizabethan audience exactly how far he was willing to push the boundaries of human cruelty. The narrative strips away any illusion of civility. It presents a world where the desire for justice rapidly rots into an absolute obsession, and where characters actively weaponize their own grief against one another. What starts as a single act of violence becomes a psychological trap. With every scene, the characters lock themselves tighter into a cycle of retaliation that guarantees their own destruction. The story opens in the immediate aftermath of a brutal war in ancient Rome. The empire's most respected general, Titus Andronicus, returns home victorious after spending years fighting the Goths. He brings the defeated Gothic leadership back in chains. Among them are the Gothic queen, Tamora, her 3 sons, and her secret lover, Aaron the Moor. Titus has lost 21 of his own sons in the wars. To honor their sacrifice according to Roman tradition, he orders the execution of Tamora's eldest boy. She begs for his life on her knees, but Titus rigidly refuses her mercy. In the political chaos following the war, the newly crowned Roman emperor, Saturninus, decides to take Tamora as his bride. Overnight, the captive queen becomes the empress of Rome, with absolute authority over the man who just slaughtered her child. Titus believed he was upholding the strict, honorable laws of his city. Instead, his complete lack of empathy handed the machinery of the state directly to an aggrieved mother. Tamora doesn't strike back at Titus politically. With the help of Aaron, she designed a hyper-targeted, deeply intimate campaign against the surviving members of his family. In the most horrific sequence Shakespeare ever put to paper, Tamora's surviving sons ambush Titus's daughter, Lavinia. After the assault, they cut off her hands and her tongue to guarantee she can never name her attackers. While Lavinia is left permanently silenced, Tamora and Aaron spring a secondary trap. They forge evidence to frame 2 of Titus's remaining sons for a high-profile murder, landing them on death row. Aaron delivers a message from the emperor. If Titus is willing to amputate his own hand and send it to the court, his sons will be pardoned. Desperate, the old general takes an axe and severs his own limb. A messenger arrives shortly after. He brings back Titus's severed hand, along with the decapitated heads of his 2 sons. The empress didn't inflict physical pain for its own sake. By forcing him to mutilate himself in exchange for a lie, she systematically dismantled his lifelong belief that the Roman state operated on logic and fairness. But the empress and her sons leave a critical loose end. Lavinia survives her injuries, and despite lacking hands or a voice, she figures out a way to identify the men who destroyed her. Guiding a wooden staff with her mouth and the stumps of her arms, she manages to carve the letters into the dirt, writing the names of Tamora's sons for her father to read. Looking at those names in the dust, Titus realizes the institutions he served his entire life offer no recourse against the royal family, so he abandons them entirely. He begins to act erratically. He mutters to himself and shoots arrows into the sky, convincing the court that his grief has finally driven him insane. It's a calculated performance, designed to make his enemies lower their guard while he engineers his response. This is the exact moment the play's geometry shifts. The loyal, rule-abiding soldier vanishes, replaced by a man willing to commit acts of monstrous cruelty to balance the scales. Operating under the cover of his fake madness, Titus springs his trap. He manages to corner and capture the 2 princes who assaulted Lavinia. He slits their throats. He grinds their bones to paste, bakes them into a massive meat pie, and then invites the emperor and empress to his home for a reconciliation dinner. He dresses as a cook and serves the meal himself. Tamora eats the pie, entirely unaware of what she is consuming, while Titus stands by and watches. Then he reveals the ingredients. In a matter of seconds, the entire social order collapses. Titus kills Lavinia to end her shame, and immediately drives a knife into Tamora. The emperor sees his wife murdered and instantly executes Titus. A heartbeat later, Titus's last surviving son cuts down the emperor. 4 bodies hit the floor in a matter of lines. There is no triumphant victory speech, because total vengeance requires total annihilation. Aaron the Moor is captured and buried chest-deep in the earth to starve. The leadership of Rome is wiped out, leaving the empire a smoldering ruin. This diagram shows the true mechanics of the tragedy. What starts as a single point of friction, Titus executing a prisoner of war, exponentially expands into a sprawling web of violence the moment the state refuses to provide fair justice. Shakespeare leaves us with a mathematical certainty. Pain that goes unhealed doesn't disappear. It merely transfers to the next generation in an unbroken, escalating loop. Titus Andronicus is difficult to watch, precisely because it strips away our comfortable definitions of right and wrong. It demonstrates that when grievance replaces law, the boundary between righteous justice and horrific revenge simply ceases to exist. If you want to see how Shakespeare continued to explore the darkest corners of human nature, check out our next video on his greatest tragedies.